They say you can change your life in 30 days. I wanted to know if you could also build a business. It started with a late night click, the kind you almost forget about until the confirmation email lands in your inbox. Welcome to the future of affiliate marketing, it read. The subject line was smug, but it had my attention. Somewhere between the promises of automation, passive income, and AI-powered funnels, I convinced myself this wasn't just another shiny distraction. This could be the shortcut, the missing piece. I wasn't new to disappointment. I'd tried the courses, the templates, the systems before, but this was AI. Smarter than me, faster than me, and if the sales page was to be believed, ready to work harder than I ever could, 30 days, one AI tool, a funnel from scratch, and me, the most hopeful skeptic in the city. I once believed speed was the only currency worth chasing online. Not money, not even skill, speed. I thought if I could launch faster than anyone else, more pages, more funnels, more campaigns, the numbers would eventually surrender. It was a neat little theory, tidy enough to hide the cracks. And for a while, it kept me running. Toronto's winter doesn't knock. It barges in without apology. That night, the snow clung to my window like frostbitten hands. The street lamp outside cast a pale halo in the dark, the kind of light that makes everything look like a still frame from an old film. My apartment smelled faintly of coffee grounds and the burnt edge of toast I'd forgotten in the toaster earlier. The radiator hissed in the corner, a low, tired animal exhaling in its sleep. I wasn't looking for anything particular on YouTube, and that's when the dangerous clicks happened. My eyes glazed over as thumbnails blurred past. Cooking tutorials I'd never follow, travel vlogs that made me want to escape the cold, and then one video that stopped me dead. A man in a fitted hoodie leaned toward the camera like he was about to tell me a secret. Imagine this, an affiliate funnel that builds itself while you sleep. I laughed, out loud, but I didn't scroll. The pitch was ridiculous, and yet there was something in his tone. Not desperate, not overexcited, almost bored with how easy it was for him. He showed me dashboards I'd never seen before, clean graphs with numbers climbing like ivy up a brick wall. You don't need to write a word, he promised. You don't need to touch the design. AI handles it all. You just collect the commissions. That phrase, collect the commissions, landed somewhere behind my ribs. I knew better. I'd been here before. I remember the ebooks that sold The Secret, but forgot to mention the years of trial and error. The drop shipping course that turned my spare room into a cardboard graveyard. The content mill job where I learned how fast you can burn out writing for pennies. But the word AI, that was new in the pitch. Or at least, new to me. By the end of the video, my mouse hovered over buy now. The pro plan was $97. Rent wasn't due for another 2 weeks. I told myself I'd make it back before the month was over. The confirmation email arrived instantly. Welcome to the future of affiliate marketing. The subject line was smug, but I felt a flicker of excitement anyway. Logging in felt like trespassing somewhere important. Tabs, graphs, templates, all sleek and ready. The dashboard background was a calming blue, the kind of color that makes you think of oceans, not the churning sea of panic you might feel later. Step 1, choose a niche. I didn't overthink it. Wireless earbuds were everywhere, trains, coffee shops, gyms, and I'd bought enough pairs myself to know the market was endless. I typed wireless earbuds into the AI search bar, and the tool practically wagged its tail. It spat out product lists, affiliate links, and pre-written blurbs that sounded polished enough to belong in a tech magazine. There were even email sequences ready to send, complete with subject lines like, "Hear the future today." I should have stopped there, thought about how generic it all sounded. But The speed was intoxicating. 30 minutes later, I had a fully functional funnel, a landing page, a thank you page, a series of follow-up emails, and tracking pixels in place. The AI even let me preview the mobile version. It looked fine, too fine. The kind of fine that means nothing bad will happen, but nothing memorable either. I ignored the twinge in my chest. Publishing was anticlimactic. One click, and it was live. My funnel was out in the wild, a ship with no captain, sailing into whatever waters the internet decided to give it. The first day, I checked my affiliate dashboard like a gambler checking a losing ticket. Morning, lunch, midnight, 0 clicks, 0 sales. On the third day, I got my first notification from the AI tool. Your funnel received 17 visits today. I opened the analytics with shaking hands and felt them go still again. Visits weren't clicks, and clicks weren't sales. By day 5, I was refreshing the page less. By day 7, I wasn't opening it at all. The AI tool kept sending cheerful reminders. Keep your momentum going. Try another funnel. But momentum wasn't what I needed. I needed proof. The landing page was clean but sterile. Every sentence could have been written for any product. The images were crisp but soulless. The email sequence read like a polite stranger trying to sell me something they didn't believe in. I realized I hadn't written a single original sentence. I'd handed the wheel to the AI, and in return, it gave me something flawless and forgettable. On the 9th night, I sat staring at the analytics graph like it might spike if I stared hard enough. Outside, snow kept falling in a steady curtain. The radiator hissed. My coffee had gone cold hours ago. I thought about the hoodie guy's smile, about the phrase collect the commissions, and wondered, had he ever actually used this tool himself? Or was I just another layer in the same machine? Maybe I was selling the dream to myself, but I paid for the month. And if there's one thing I hate more than losing money, it's quitting before I know for sure. That night, I opened a blank document. Not a prompt field, not a template, just white space, waiting. The blank document blinked back at me like a slow metronome. 1, 2, 3, blink. It felt less like an invitation and more like a dare. Go on, say something real. I tried. I typed, "These earbuds will change the way you hear the world." I stared at the sentence, felt nothing, and hit delete. I typed again, this time not about the product at all. I wrote about the last time I'd bought something that made me feel different. Not richer, not smarter, just different. It was those noise-canceling headphones years ago when I was working in that open plan office. The place smelled of burned coffee and printer toner. The guy in the cubicle next to me chewed gum like it was his job. I'd saved for weeks, skipping lunches out, tossing spare change into an envelope in my desk. The day I finally bought them, the world dimmed. Not in color, in sound. The city's constant buzz turned it into a soft, steady hum. Footsteps muffled, car horns softened into sighs. For the first time in months, I felt like my brain could breathe. I wrote that memory into the document not as a pitch, but as a story. I didn't bother with features yet. I just wanted the reader to feel that quiet. 40 minutes later, the page wasn't blank anymore. It was messy, uneven, but alive. The next morning, I rebuilt the funnel from scratch. The AI handled the bones, opt-in form, automation, analytics tracking. But the skin, the voice, that was mine. The headline read, "How I Found Silence in a City That Never Stops." Below it, some products you buy for the specs, others you buy for the feeling. The landing page had my own photos, the headphones lying on the book near my window, snow blurred outside, resting on the park bench beside a scarf. The lighting wasn't perfect, the angles a little off, but they were mine. When I recorded the voiceover, my tone was conversational, like I was talking to a friend. I let the pauses stay. When I stumbled over the word commute, I laughed and kept going. Publishing this version felt different. It wasn't adrenaline. It was the quiet satisfaction of stacking firewood. Work done, ready when needed. The first day brought a handful of visits. No sales, but the time on page was longer. People were scrolling, reading. By the end of the first week, I had 17 clicks. 2 turned into sales. $29.40 in commissions. It wasn't much, but it was proof. Proof that someone had read my story and cared enough to act. That was the crack in the wall I built between myself and the channel. I started carrying a small notebook, jotting down details from daily life. A stranger humming through cheap earbuds on the bus, the clink of coffee cups in a crowded cafe, the muffled rumble of a subway tunnel. These weren't content ideas, they were moments, seeds for stories. The AI stayed in my process, but it was in the passenger seat now. It posed specs, generated bullet points I could ignore or adapt, handled the tedious parts of building a funnel. But it didn't speak for me. Halfway through the month, I built a second funnel for a compact Bluetooth speaker I'd owned for years. The story wasn't about wattage or Bluetooth range. It was about a Canada Day picnic where the speaker survived a splash of beer, a fall from a picnic table, and still played until sunset. The headline: the speaker that outlasted the party. The first email subject line: what survived the beer and the bass. Publishing that one, I felt the same steady satisfaction as before. And then the comments started. One from Vancouver: this is exactly the kind of review I like. Feels like you actually own the thing. Another: the picnic table story had me laughing. Subscribed. Those comments were worth more than the commissions. They were proof that my voice, my actual voice, was reaching someone. By the end of the month, my total commissions were $62.14. The number was small, but the trust I'd earned was bigger than any payout I made during my AI does it all phase. And that's when I knew I wasn't just building funnels anymore. I was building conversations. I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Curiosity. Not the shallow, scrolling kind. The kind that makes you sit up a little straighter, lean closer, and actually pay attention. When the first 2 sales came in, the number didn't matter as much as the path that led to them. Someone had read my words, clicked through, and decided, yes, this feels right for me. That meant more than the $29.40 sitting in my affiliate dashboard. But the truth is, alongside the spark of curiosity was something else: suspicion. I'd been burned before. In the past, every new tool, every revolutionary system, every big promise had the same arc. At first, excitement. Then, a trickle of results that made me believe I was on the edge of something big. And finally, the slow fading to nothing when the numbers flattened and I was left wondering if I just fooled myself. I didn't want to repeat that arc. Still, I couldn't deny the shift. This time, the excitement wasn't about the AI doing everything for me. It was about what I could do with it. I felt a kind of strange relief. The pressure to be perfect was gone. When I made my first funnel in this new way, I didn't care that the photos weren't high resolution or that my voiceover had a few stumbles. It felt alive, and that life, that human edge, seemed to be what people responded to. There was also a nervousness I couldn't quite shake. I was putting more of myself into these funnels than I ever had before. My voice, my memories, my tiny, imperfect details. And with that came the risk that someone might not just dislike the product, they might dislike me. The morning after the second funnel went live, I remember making coffee and hesitating before opening the dashboard. What if yesterday's clicks were a fluke? What if nobody read the email all the way through? But there they were. New opens, more clicks. And then one reply. It wasn't long, just a few sentences from someone who'd read the speaker story. Loved the picnic table part. Reminded me of our backyard parties in Kelowna. I stood there in my kitchen, staring at the screen, smiling like an idiot. Not because it meant more money, it did not yet, but because it meant I'd made someone remember something real in their own life. That feeling is hard to explain unless you've had it. It's not about validation in the shallow sense. It's about proof that your words can reach across the noise and land somewhere that matters. Of course, not every moment that month was warm and glowing. There were mornings when I woke up to 0 new clicks. Afternoons where I questioned if telling stories was worth the time, compared to pumping out 5 AI-built funnels in the same hours. But when I compared the retention graphs, the difference was undeniable. The AI-heavy funnels I made before had steep drop-offs. Most people were gone within 20 seconds. The new ones? They held people past the halfway mark, some to the very end. I felt a growing confidence in my process. Not cocky, I knew I was still learning, but confident enough to trust my instincts over the AI's templates. It was in week 3 that I started experimenting more. I wrote an email that opened with a question, not a product. What's the last sound you'd miss if the world went silent? Then I told a short story about riding the subway during a snowstorm, how the usual screech of the rails was muffled into a low, almost comforting hum. Only at the end did I connect it to the headphones I was recommending. The AI would never have written that. It didn't know what it was like to stand in a half-empty subway car, watching snow swirl in the glow of the tunnel lights, feeling both alone and connected to everyone in it. I felt lighter writing like this. Not in the sense of less work, it was actually more work, but in the sense that it didn't weigh on me the way churning out automated content used to. And maybe the strangest feeling of all was ownership. The old funnels never felt like mine. They were assembled by me, but not built by me. The new ones, every story, every pause, every imperfect photograph, they were fingerprints. By the end of the 3rd week, my total commissions were just over $50. It wasn't much, but when I looked at those numbers, I didn't see only $50. I saw trust being built, slowly, one real connection at a time. And for the first time since I'd started affiliate marketing, I felt like I wasn't chasing strangers. I was inviting people in. The feeling of ownership grew slowly, like warmth spreading through your hands after coming in from the cold. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed it until it came back. In the early days of using AI, there was a kind of adrenaline, but it was hollow. Like drinking 3 cups of coffee without eating breakfast. You get the buzz, but not the strength. Now, there was something sturdier under my feet. I was still using AI, yes, but it was more like having a good knife in the kitchen, useful, efficient, instead of expecting it to cook the meal for me. Still, I felt the tension every time I hit publish. There was always that whisper, what if this one falls flat? It's a quiet kind of fear, the sort that doesn't shout but sits in the corner of your mind, arms crossed, waiting to be proven right. Some mornings, I'd open the dashboard and the numbers would be still. No new clicks, no new emails. Just the same flat line I'd seen the day before. Those were the mornings that tested me. The AI version of me, the old me, would have panicked, cranked out 3 new funnels, thrown them into the void, and hoped the sheer volume would break the silence. The new me waited, adjusted, listened. I began paying attention not just to what people clicked, but to what they didn't. If a story got no replies, I read it again out loud. Sometimes I could hear it the moment where the rhythm faltered, where the hook didn't pull hard enough. Other times, it wasn't the writing at all, it was the wrong product for that audience. One night, I got an email that summed up everything I was learning. It read, "I'm not in the market for a speaker, but I read the whole email because it was a good story." That was it, one line, but it stuck with me. It told me that even when the product wasn't a match, the story could still land, and maybe the next product would be right for that reader. That's when I stopped thinking of funnels as sales machines and started thinking of them as invitations. Some people would step in right away. Others would linger at the door, waiting for the right reason. I also noticed a subtle change in my own habits. Before, I looked at the affiliate dashboard 5-10 times a day. Now, I'd go hours, sometimes an entire afternoon without checking. Instead, I was writing, shooting my own quick photos, recording voiceovers, and not obsessing over retakes. There was one afternoon in particular I remember. The snow had turned to slush, the sky a flat gray. I'd been out running errands and stopped by a small cafe to warm up. Sitting there with a mug between my hands, I pulled out my notebook and wrote down the sound of the milk steamer, the way the barista tucked her hair behind her ear when she concentrated, the smell of cinnamon in the air. Those little details had nothing to do with affiliate marketing and everything to do with it, because they were the details that made a scene feel real. When I got home, I worked them into an email about working from cafes with noise-canceling headphones. I didn't lead with the product. I led with the scene. The hiss of the steamer almost hide the sound of your own thoughts. That email got more replies than clicks, and strangely, I didn't mind, because each reply was a real human on the other end, telling me about their own coffee shop rituals. That was worth something the dashboard couldn't measure. By the final week of the month, I could feel the difference in myself. The excitement was still there, but it wasn't a jittery kind of excitement. It was steadier, more like a quiet confidence. I trusted my process. I trusted my voice. Of course, there were still moments of doubt. On day 26, I sent an email I was sure would hit a playful story about accidentally sitting on my Bluetooth speaker at the park and hearing the music thud through the grass. I thought it was charming. Apparently, my audience didn't open rate was fine, but the clicks were lower than usual. Old me would have deleted it from the sequence and pretended it never happened. New me left it in, because maybe it didn't make someone click today, but it might make them smile, and a smile is its own kind of seed. On the very last night of the month, I sat down with a notebook and listed every product I'd promoted, every story I'd told, and every reply I'd received. It was messy, full of arrows and side notes, but one thing was clear. The moments people responded to most were the ones that felt like conversations, not pitches. I felt lighter, not because I'd cracked some magical code, but because I knew I didn't need one. I just needed to keep showing up, telling stories worth reading, and letting the AI do what it does best, the heavy lifting in the background. That was the biggest change, the shift from fear to trust. Fear that I'd never figure this out, replaced by trust that even if the growth was slow, it was mine. It didn't happen in a single moment. There was no blinding flash of insight, no cinematic swell of music. It was slower than that, more like watching ice melt on a windowsill. At first, nothing changes. Then, without you noticing, there's water pooling at the edge. The first drop landed the morning of day 29. I was at my desk, scrolling through the analytics for the 5th time that week. When I saw it, a single sale. Not huge, $43 in commission. But it had come from a product I'd almost cut from my funnel entirely a mid-range pair of wireless earbuds. The funny part? It wasn't even the product link at the top of the email that got clicked. It was a hyperlink buried in the middle of a story I'd written about walking home in the snow. The link was just 3 words: these little speakers. That was when it started to click. It wasn't the AI perfect headline that sold it. It wasn't the polished hero image or the countdown timer. It was the part of the story where I'd mentioned listening to a song that made the streetlights feel warmer, the kind of detail that AI would never have invented because it wasn't relevant enough. I leaned back in my chair and let that sink in. All month, I'd been thinking about AI like a magic trick, the kind that only works if you follow every instruction to the letter. But now, I saw it for what it really was: a stagehand. It could set the scene, adjust the lights, even hand me the right prop at the right time, but I was the one who had to step out there and perform. The old me had been obsessed with control, either giving it all away to the AI or gripping it so tightly that nothing could breathe. This new middle ground was different. I could feel the edges of my own voice again, and I didn't want to let go. That night, I stayed up late rereading some of the first funnels I'd launched. The difference was startling. The early ones read like they'd been written in a language I only half understood correct, but cold. The newer ones had rougher edges, sure, but they also had pulse. They sounded like someone had actually lived the moments they described. I thought about the hoodie guy from the video, his promise of automatic funnels and effortless commissions. He hadn't been wrong. Exactly, the AI could build those things. But he left out the truth that mattered. No machine could make people care. Somewhere between my first failed funnel and that one buried hyperlink, I'd stopped chasing the fantasy of a self-running business and started building something I was willing to stand behind. And here's the thing, they don't tell you that shift changes everything. Because once you realize the tool isn't the business, you stop worshiping it. You stop waiting for it to save you. And you start using it the way it was meant to be used, to make your work sharper, not smaller. I closed my laptop sometime after midnight, but I didn't feel tired. I felt awake. Awake to the fact that I didn't need to be faster than everyone else. I just needed to be more me than anyone else could be. The snow outside had stopped falling, and for the first time all month, I didn't check the forecast for tomorrow. Whatever came, I knew I could work with it. The morning after that small commission, I woke up earlier than usual. Not because of an alarm I hadn't set one, but because my mind refused to stay still. The apartment was still wrapped in winter silence. No streetcars yet, no footsteps on the snow-packed sidewalk below. Just me, a half-empty mug from last night, and the faint blue glow of my laptop waiting for me to open it again. I didn't rush to check the dashboard. Instead, I pulled up the email that had made the sale and read it like a stranger. The sentences wandered, stumbled even. I'd mentioned the way my breath fogged up my scarf and how my earbuds kept slipping out when I jammed my hands deeper into my coat pockets. Nothing about that was optimized, but it was true. And apparently, truth had a way of selling things that even the sleekest AI headline couldn't touch. I thought about every AI-generated email I sent that month. Perfect subject lines, balanced word counts, calls to action positioned exactly where they should be. They read like a script I hadn't written. And maybe that was a problem, they didn't feel like me because they weren't me. Somewhere along the way, I'd let the AI become my voice instead of my assistant. I'd hand it over not just the work, but the weight of the connection. It was the same mistake I'd made in my first year of affiliate marketing, back when I copied and pasted product blurbs from Amazon without even trying to reword them. I thought speed was the win, But speed without soul just means you arrive nowhere faster. By day 30, I wasn't chasing numbers anymore. I was chasing resonance. I started rewriting every email, not from scratch, but from the AI's draft, keeping the skeleton, but replacing the blood. I'd swap a generic benefit with a memory, a tech spec with a small confession. Instead of enjoy crystal clear sound anywhere you go, I wrote, these little speakers made the subway feel like my own private concert, right up until the train screeched and reminded me I was still in Toronto at rush hour. The clicks doubled, the replies tripled. Some people didn't even buy. They just wrote back to say the email made them laugh. And for the first time, that felt like progress. Because if they remembered me, they might come back later. That week, I stripped down one of my funnels entirely. No stock photos. No AI perfect bullet points. Just a single image of the product in my own messy living room, sitting on top of a coffee table ringed with mug stains. It felt risky. It felt wrong. But it also felt like mine. And here's the thing about realizing your own voice matters. Once you've heard it again, you can't unhear it. The AI still worked in the background, quietly stitching together templates and tracking data, but it wasn't the show anymore. By the time the month ended, the numbers still weren't spectacular, but they were honest. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was building something worth keeping, not just something worth selling. That night, as I closed my laptop and let the room sink into darkness, I caught my reflection in the window. Not the tired, doubtful version of me from 4 weeks ago, but someone who finally understood the simplest truth in this whole game. AI doesn't replace you. It frees you if you know when to take back the pen. I didn't start over. Starting over is what you do when you're ashamed of the mess. I wasn't ashamed anymore, not of the failed funnels, not of the empty clicks, not even of the bland copy that could have been written by any machine. This time, I was keeping the mess and building on top of it. Day 31 began with a legal pad instead of a login screen. A real pen, ink that smudged if I dragged my sleeve across it. I wrote down 3 questions. Who am I really selling to? Why should they trust me? What can I give them that AI can't? The first answer came easy. People like me. People tired of ads promising effortless success. People who rather buy from someone honest than from a faceless brand. The second one took longer. Trust isn't something you can declare. It's something you earn. And to earn it, I'd have to show more of the parts I've been hiding, the failures, the doubts, the snowdy nights when the only light in the room came from a stubborn laptop screen. The third answer, that one hit hardest. What AI couldn't give them was me. Not the perfect post-processed version, the one with coffee stains on the desk and an inbox full of half-read newsletters. I opened the AI tool, but I didn't hand over the reins this time. I gave it my answers, first typed them in like commandments, target audience, trust building, human stories. I told it to strip away the hype to give me bones I could flesh out. For my new funnel, I didn't pick wireless earbuds or trending gadgets. I went smaller, stranger. Something the hoodie guy would have laughed at. Replacement ear cushions for old headphones. A product most people wouldn't even think to promote. The AI didn't question me, it never does. It pulled up suppliers, affiliate links, and even a draft headline. Give your favorite headphones a second life. I kept that line. It had a heartbeat. This time, I wrote the landing page myself. The AI suggested bullet points about premium memory foam and noise isolation technology. I swapped them for a single paragraph about my first pair of over-ear headphones, the ones I'd bought with my first freelance paycheck, the ones I refused to throw away even after the padding cracked and crumbled. I took my own photo of the cushions on my scratched up table. No stock images, no glossy lightbox, just the truth. Here's what they look like when you actually own them. For the email sequence, I let the AI give me the structure, subject line, body, call to action. Then I rewrote every word in my own voice. I added little asides, a joke about how the old cushions left black flakes in my hair for weeks, a confession that I once wrapped them in duct tape because I couldn't afford replacements. Every click I asked for was wrapped in something human. I didn't just say, buy now. I said, if your headphones still work, they deserve better than peeling foam. Trust me, I've been there. By the time I hit publish, it didn't feel like tossing a bottle into the ocean anymore. It felt like walking up to someone, looking them in the eye, and telling them a story worth remembering. The AI tool was still there, still smoothing the edges and keeping track of the numbers, but it wasn't leading the dance anymore. The first day after publishing the new funnel, I didn't refresh the stats every hour. Not because I was disciplined, but because I was strangely calm. It was the calm you feel after mailing a letter you actually cared about, the kind where you trust the words enough to let them travel on their own. Still, by evening, curiosity won. 8 clicks, 2 email replies. No sales yet, but the replies matter more. One reader thanked me for the laugh about duct tape headphones. Another asked where they could find the brand I mentioned. Day 3 brought the first sale, $3.42. Not a fortune, but not nothing. And it felt different this time. The money wasn't the victory, the connection was. Someone had read my story, nodded at my problem, and decided my solution was worth paying for. I doubled down. Each day, I added a new piece. A short blog post about cleaning headphone pads. A YouTube short showing how to swap them out in under a minute. Even a quick Instagram story of my coffee table setup. The AI helped repurpose my words into captions, transcripts, and snippets, but it was all built from my core material. By the second week, I noticed something else. I wasn't chasing everyone anymore. I was speaking to the kind of person who'd keep their headphones for years because they value the sound, the comfort, the history. The AI had given me the tools, but it was my stories that filtered the audience. One night, I sat back and compared my new funnel to the first one. The difference was night and day. The old one looked like it could belong to any affiliate in the world, faceless, interchangeable. The new one was unmistakably mine. It didn't just sell cushions. It sold the belief that small things are worth saving. By the end of the month, I had a modest but steady trickle of sales. $64.80 in commissions. Far from the hoodie guy's 6 figures, but far more satisfying than that lifeless wireless earbuds funnel. More importantly, I'd found my pace. The AI still handled the structure, the scheduling, the technical polish, but the soul, that was me. And I realized that was the real leverage. I wasn't building a machine to print money in my sleep. I was building a voice people wanted to hear again. The 30 days ended without fireworks. No viral explosion, no inbox flooded with payment received emails. Instead, it ended with a spreadsheet, a neat little column of dates, clicks, sales, and the total at the bottom, $64.80. If you looked at it from the outside, you might think I'd failed. You might compare it to the hoodie guy's screenshots, the ones with numbers so big they needed commas, and decide I'd wasted my time. But sitting there, with my coffee going lukewarm in my hands, I felt something different. Pride. Not the loud, chest-beating kind. The quiet pride of knowing I hadn't cheated myself this time. The first funnel had been like renting a suit for a wedding I wasn't invited to. It looked sharp, but it wasn't mine. This funnel, it fit. It carried my fingerprints in every sentence, my desk in every photo, my voice in every email. I thought back to the first sale, that $3.42 that made me grin like I won a jackpot. That tiny number had been the crack in the dam. The rest wasn't a flood, but a steady, satisfying leak. And with each sale, I saw patterns. People didn't just click because they needed ear cushions. They clicked because they felt the same stubborn attachment to something they owned. Because my story reminded them of the time they taped their own gear together instead of throwing it out. That was the moment the real result hit me. I wasn't just earning commissions, I was earning trust. And trust in this business is worth more than a quick $1,000 hit. Trust compounds. I ran the numbers again, not just the money, but the engagement. Emails opened, 43% average. Replies, 1 in 12 subscribers. Click-through, 9%. Those weren't vanity metrics. They were proof that my audience wasn't just scrolling past. They were reading, they were listening. I leaned back, the radiator humming in the background like it had all winter, and realized something else. I'd learned how to make the AI work for me, not the other way around. I no longer feared being replaced by it. I'd found my place in the partnership, the human who sets the tone, tells the story, decides what matters. That was the real win. The money would grow, I knew that now. But the skill, the connection, that was mine to keep. The last day of the 30-day run didn't feel like an ending. It felt like walking out of a classroom after a long semester. You've learned something, but the real test will be what you do next. I opened the dashboard one more time, the same way you open the fridge at midnight even though you know exactly what's inside. Same clean interface. Same tabs. The final number stared back at me. $64.80. I thought about how I felt on day one, staring at a blank AI template, convinced this thing might make me rich without lifting a finger. And then I thought about all the quiet nights I spent rewriting, reshaping, rethinking, not because the AI had failed, but because it had given me a skeleton that needed flesh. What I built wasn't perfect. Some pages still loaded too slowly. Some emails still sounded like they'd been translated twice before reaching my reader. But it was mine. The strangest part? The $64.80 didn't feel small anymore. It felt like a seed and I knew exactly how to plant it. If I could make that in 30 days, while spending half my time experimenting and half my time fixing my own mistakes, what could I make in 60? In 90? In a year? The math wasn't the exciting part. The method was. Before this, affiliate marketing had always felt like a series of disconnected stabs in the dark. Now, it felt like a rhythm one I could repeat, refine, and scale. The AI was no longer the star of the show. It was my stagehand. It cued the lights, set the props, handed me the lines. But the delivery, the timing, the way the audience leaned in, that was all me. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote a list by hand on paper. At the top, I scribbled, things I can sell without selling myself. Ear cushions were first, obviously. But below that came all sorts of ideas. Laptop stands, budget microphones, ergonomic chairs, products I'd actually used, products I could talk about without faking enthusiasm. It wasn't just about finding niches anymore. It was about finding mirrors, items that reflected the way I worked, the way I thought, the way I wanted to help people. As I set the pen down, I realized this wasn't the end of a 30-day challenge. It was the first chapter of a longer story. And for the first time, I was in no rush to skip ahead. If you've ever been like me, staring at a glowing screen at 1:43 a.m., refreshing a dashboard that refuses to change, the cocktail of frustration and stubbornness that keeps you there, it's not just about the money. It's about proving to yourself that you weren't wrong to try. I've been in that place more times than I care to admit. Buying tools because they promised speed. Clicking buy now because the pitch made my heart beat faster. Telling myself this one will be different because I wanted to believe it. Most of the time, those late night purchases end the same way. A half-built project gathering digital dust in a forgotten folder, a vague bitterness toward the tool and toward myself. But this time was different, not because the AI was magical, but because I didn't let it do all the work. I used it like a good hammer. It drove the nails, but I still decided where the walls would stand. Maybe you felt that same creeping doubt, that voice that says, "You've been here before, and it didn't work then. Why would it work now?" I've heard it in my own head, and I've ignored it long enough to know when it's right, and when it's just fear in a borrowed suit. Here's what I learned. The tool you buy isn't the business. The funnel you build isn't the business. You are. The AI can't know the story you've lived. It can't remember the way your first big failure felt in your stomach, or the way a $3.42 sale can light you up from the inside. Only you can turn that into something people want to hear, and once they hear it, something they want to buy from. That's why I'm telling you this without any pressure, without hype. If you've been circling the idea of trying AI in your affiliate work, maybe now's the time, not because it will make you rich in 30 days, not because it will save you from doing the work, but because it might show you, like it showed me, that you already have more of the pieces than you think. And yes, I left the link in the description not as a shove, but as a door. You can step through it or not. You can start with a free plan, the way I did, and see if it fits. If it doesn't, you will have lost nothing but a little time. If it does, you might find yourself sitting at your own desk 30 days from now with your own quiet spreadsheet, feeling the same strange pride I'm feeling now. Sometimes I think about the version of me who clicked buy now on that cold Toronto night, the one wrapped in a fraying fleece blanket, telling himself that $97 was a ticket to something bigger. He wasn't wrong. He just didn't know the ticket was for a train he'd have to drive himself. If you've ever been like me, you've probably seen the same ads I did. Perfectly lit, perfectly confident strangers promising you the key to freedom. And maybe you, like me, felt a pull not toward the product itself, but toward the hope it carried. Hope is a tricky thing. It can carry you through 30 days of trial and error, or it can vanish the moment the results don't match the promise. The only difference is whether you decide to stay in the game after the first disappointment. I almost didn't die. After that first week of 0 clicks, I thought about shutting it all down. The AI funnel felt like a shiny toy that had already lost its novelty. But something in me, maybe pride, maybe stubbornness, refused to let it end there. So I kept tweaking. I kept writing my own lines into the emails, replacing stock phrases with words that sounded like me. I swapped product images for ones I'd taken myself, blurry edges and all, because they felt real. Slowly, the funnel stopped looking like something the AI had built for anyone and started looking like something I built for someone specific. That's the part the hoodie guy in the video never mentioned. The AI will get you to the starting line, but it won't run the race for you. And if you let it, it will keep you circling the track instead of moving forward. By the end of the month, I realized this wasn't just a 30-day experiment. It was a blueprint. I learned more about my own decision-making, my own blind spots, and my own persistence than I had from any course I bought before. If you've been in that place, the quiet grind, the private little war between your expectations and your reality, then you know what I mean. You know that the only real loss is stopping before you understand what went wrong. and what could go right if you gave it another shot. So here's what I'll say. Without the flashing lights or countdown timers, if you've been waiting for the perfect moment to try, you might be waiting forever. There's no perfect moment. There's only the moment you decide to start. And if you want to start where I did, I left the link in the description. It's the same tool, the same free plan I began with. The difference now is that you're walking knowing what I wish. I'd known that the tool is just a start and the real work is yours. Take it. Leave it. Either way, don't leave yourself wondering what if.